やるならディベートで勝負しませんか？
そんなことする？さっとと消え失せろクソ気狂い。
ちょっと待って。
Oh my god! Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Input 1. It is time for yet another casual review, this time for Yakuza Like a Dragon. I, like many, was pretty trepidatious about Yakuza turning into a JRPG. I've been a fan for Yakuza for a long time, so learning that the game I loved was undergoing a dramatic change was definitely concerning. One of the reasons I loved Yakuza was because it was an open world brawler. In a lot of ways it was structured like an RPG, but in a sense it was like one big 3D Streets of Rage game. That was Yakuza to me. I also felt that the game's slower stuff like Clan Creator and some of the mini games generally lacked snappiness and convenience. The general pacing and presentation of Yakuza side content can be a bit inconsistent. So from that perspective, I was a bit worried that Yakuza 7 wouldn't be a very intuitive JRPG, especially after Persona 5 really changed things with its breakneck turn-based pacing that still hasn't been beaten. However, after playing Judgment, I realized that a dramatic shakeup was something Yakuza really needed. I didn't dislike Judgment despite the issues I expressed in my review, but it definitely made me see things from RGG Studio's point of view and why they felt they needed to make a big fundamental change to Yakuza. That being said though, I am glad that Judgment is essentially a companion series for those who still want the series' traditional real-time action combat. Plus there's already 7 Yakuza games available pretty much everywhere, so there's still plenty of that style of gameplay being offered. I also think adding the subtitle Like a Dragon to coincide with the genre change was a legitimately genius touch. It's essentially a way of letting people know this isn't the same Yakuza, and a way of letting people know that this is a new jumping on point. But of course, Like a Dragon is also the literal translated title of the original Japanese title of Yakuza, Ryuga Gotoku. So it's a great way of finally incorporating the original Japanese title into the Western releases. And then there's the Dragon Quest reference, since Dragon Quest is referenced multiple times during the game, and because this game is a JRPG, so it's Like a Dragon Quest, Like a Dragon Quest. As I said, I think it's legitimately brilliant, even if there might be future confusion considering Like a Dragon is Ryuga Gotoku 7 in Japan, and future sequels in America will probably be Like a Dragon 2 and Like a Dragon 3 instead of Yakuza 7 and 8, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess. One of the other main questions I had going into this game was, will Yakuza be able to continue without Kiryu? Again, I liked Judgment, but I felt that Yagami was an incredibly disappointing character compared to Kiryu, who was immediately lovable from the very first game, or the prequel, depending on where you started. And he was someone I loved seeing involved in all kinds of different situations. To me, Kiryu is Yakuza. He is the physical representation of what it means to be a Yakuza in this world, the same way John Marsden represents the Wild West in Red Dead Redemption. And like Red Dead Redemption, Yakuza Like a Dragon story represents a changing tide in the Yakuza world due to Kiryu's absence, and is thus represented by a new protagonist, Ichiban Kasuga.
Hey, how's it going?
Thankfully, Ichiban instantly proves himself as an interesting and lovable protagonist almost from the jump, in a scene where he's not only physically introduced, but also a scene where his character is introduced. You instantly understand who this guy is, what he's about. He's committed to doing what he thinks is the right thing to do, almost to a lovable fault. Where Kiryu is mostly pretty wise and mature from day one, Ichiban is definitely more of a, dare I say, himbo type, which is all the rage these days apparently. Ichiban's backstory is also pretty interesting too, especially if you know the inevitable fate of his home from playing Kiwami. It's really cool seeing somewhat minor places with series history being used in interesting ways. It adds a ton of context and weight for people who have played the previous games. And while I do think Ichiban's JRPG party is also pretty interesting, Ichiban is clearly number one when it comes to interesting and lovable characters in this game. And just real quick, Ichiban in English actually means number one, or the best, or favorite, and they definitely poke fun at that name quite frequently in the game's story. All the characters are pretty solid, but I fail to feel the way I do about Ichiban about anyone else in the story. But I do think Adachi specifically has some of the best standout moments. Of the ensemble cast, I would say he's probably my favorite character. But there'll be these big dramatic moments with certain party members, and I just didn't feel the way I think the game wanted me to feel in certain places, which is something I would kind of have to spoil to make more sense of. But if you've played the game, you might know what I'm talking about. But having a JRPG party is not where Like a Dragon is mostly different from previous games. Obviously, that lies in the game itself. So, does Like a Dragon justify its existence as a JRPG? I would say yes. Yes, it does. I was afraid, based on the things I said earlier, that RGG Studio wouldn't be able to deliver a modern JRPG that makes use of recent advancements, but I would say they absolutely delivered a competent and modern JRPG here. The mechanics are solid, there's depth and purpose, it's the real deal, absolutely. I also appreciate that despite being a JRPG, it's not 100 hours long. This is a JRPG that, relatively speaking compared to others in its genre, really respects your time. Even when factoring in some grinding and sub-stories, it's not that much longer than some of the other games in the series like 5 or Kiwami 2. But the potential for it to go long is definitely there for sure. But despite it being a competent JRPG, I feel that it doesn't do a ton to separate itself from other recent JRPGs. It doesn't dramatically advance the genre in any major way, and there are certain moments that reminded me that this was indeed RGG Studio's first JRPG. That being said though, there were some unique traits of Like a Dragon that I really enjoyed, even compared to the best JRPGs out there like Dragon Quest XI and Persona 5. The literal job system is really fun. I really liked how each character had a host of different jobs they could use, each one giving them a unique set of abilities that can become universal after leveling up each job to a certain point. Plus, each one comes with a unique costume, and they're almost always goofy and fun to look at. However, when it comes to certain points in the game's story, there are very clearly defined roles that you'll need your party to take on. You can't just slap together random jobs and expect to do well in prolonged and difficult battles, which can be a bit frustrating when you're caught off guard by some of those. But that's also part of the learning curve of this game, is knowing when to be what class or job. It's also a tad annoying how, in order to change jobs, you have to go all the way back to a certain building to do so. You can't just do it in a menu, which I know encourages you to deliberately pick a job and stick with it, but it can be pretty frustrating when you just want to swap jobs and you gotta run all the way to a taxi, pick the place, wait a second, run up the stairs, pick a new job, run back to the taxi, pick the place you need to be, wait a second, and then run all the way back to where you were again. Just put that in the menus or something. I guess I'm in the airing my grievances part of the review right now, so I might just keep going on that. The encounter rate is kind of insane at times. I can't really tell if it was deliberate at certain points, but there will be times when I literally couldn't walk for more than 5 seconds without running into a fight, multiple times within a short period of time. And I don't know, maybe that doesn't seem too crazy to some people, but it can be really annoying how intrusive it is when you're just trying to listen to a conversation or get to a restaurant to heal or something. It's comical at times. And difficulty spikes are a bit intense at times too. There will be these huge level jumps that RGG Studio attempts to circumvent by introducing new grinding spots, but it doesn't change the fact that occasionally you'll be chilling in the level 30 range and then suddenly get a level 50 boss thrown at you. And combat, while relatively snappy, does suffer from occasional mishaps where characters get stuck or something weird happens and you just gotta wait until the game fixes itself. In terms of pace, Persona 5, it is not. I was also kind of disappointed that you can't move the characters freely during combat. This was something I thought was kind of pointless in Dragon Quest XI, but Like a Dragon does have certain positioning bonuses and group attacks that depend on being in the right place at the right time, and being able to move around would add a nice strategic element to the combat, I think. I also wasn't a fan of how buffs and debuffs feel really temporary, how there are kind of just a few select abilities you need to use, and how little variety there is in terms of damage types. But these issues are relatively minor in the grand scheme of things. While they do essentially prove that Like a Dragon is, while competent, a relatively simple JRPG, it still has tons of heart and soul inside. I love how this game is just a big urban JRPG with enemies and abilities that reflect that. You're not fighting with battle axes or shields, you're using bats, cooking utensils, office supplies, sledgehammers, and fighting the random menaces of the city like drunkards, perverts, or gang members. The music is really good too, like really good. And I love the narrative theme of Like a Dragon. The message of this game is honestly really beautiful and touching. The idea that it's never too late to start from zero, that it's never too late to reinvent yourself and fulfill the personal vision of who you can be. It's an idea that's presented in both the story, with Ichiban going from respected Yakuza member to literal homeless guy in a new place, and it's reflected in the gameplay, with the player having to work up from a level 1 scrub all the way to a CEO that could shoot lasers from space. The progression of both character and gameplay is so apparent in all parts of this game, and really reinforces to the player how far they and Ichiban have come since the beginning of the story. It's a fusion of theme and gameplay that works really, really well, and really resonated with me too. And no spoilers, but that ending, like, I legit clapped when it ended. It is Shakespearean, and I legit mean that in all seriousness. Like, take a bow. So, for all kinds of reasons, including the ones I've been mentioning this whole review, I'm going to give Yakuza Like a Dragon a very solid 8 out of 10. I think it's a great game with a great story, and I think RGG Studio did a really good job considering the genre shift. It's not exactly Guerrilla tier with their shift from Killzone to Horizon, but it's a respectable effort that ultimately has a lot of room for improvement. And for a first attempt, RGG Studio did a great job of retaining the heart of Yakuza while moving it to a new home. So if you're like me and you were a bit trepidatious about the new direction, but you love the series, I think Yakuza Like a Dragon is absolutely worth checking out. Obviously, there are things that have been sacrificed for the move, but I think the end result is really refreshing, and I legit can't wait to see where this series goes next. And those are my thoughts on Yakuza Like a Dragon. This has been another casual review on Input 1, and I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to like, subscribe, or comment your thoughts about this game. I also have a Patreon where you can subscribe for early access and credits in each video, just like these fine fellows did. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned.